Hello and welcome to my channel. What I'm drawing here is a really bad picture of a dragon. I need this as a frame of reference so I can make a dragon puppet. It's to remind me roughly what component is going where. So to make this I'm going to need lots of different types of foam, which include high density floor mats, soft furnishing foam and single sheets. I want this to be pretty flexible so the base layer will be made out of soft foam, and I start off by cutting out what will be the upper jaw. The preferred glue for this material is contact cement. You simply coat both halves and wait for it to dry to the touch, and then once you touch them together you get an instant bond. The next step is to glue this onto the underside. That will complete the basic shape, and you can see now that the foam is forced into a tunnel-like shape, and this is one of the benefits for using such a material. I'll make the lower half of the jaw in a similar fashion, except this is slightly smaller. In order for the mouth to open and close, I'm going to need a hinge system. So at the back I glue on 3 strips of foam. I've also fixed into place a finger grip so my hand doesn't slip out. It looks a bit rough and ready, but this will never be seen on the finished puppet. But more importantly, it does the job. Next I start work on the beak. This is the untested pattern that I came up with for the lower part. After a rough test for it, I glue in some internal supports. Plus I also check to make sure that it slots onto the end of the mouth. The pattern for the top half is a little bit different. Once again, I glue the edges together and add some internal support. I then test fit them both before starting work on the tips. I'm sure there's a more efficient method of doing this, but it works for me. Next I extend the beak down to a point, and then using a Dremel I smooth down all the edges. That's looking a little bit more dragon-like now. Using the Dremel again, I gouge out the nostrils. The back end needs to be a little bit deeper than the front. To help the beak not only close, but close in alignment, I drill out a couple of holes so I can place in some small magnets, and both halves join together quite nicely like so. There's quite a few visible gaps, so my next job is to fill them in, and for that I'm using Milliput, which is a 2-part epoxy and can be watered down to fit into all the gaps. Once dry it can be sanded smooth. The beaks are ready to be glued into place. I'll just try fit them one last time. The magnets help ensure it stays in alignment. Using the thin sheets of foam I line the inside of the mouth. I need to leave a small gap at the back so it will still close. I also upgraded the magnet for a bigger one, and it snaps shut and open quite nicely. Now it's time to build out the back end a little bit and give it a neck, and I do this by gluing on the bottom and the top half. Next I decided to work on the dragon's crown, so I cut out a template. Because of the angle of the face, the spikes will stick out at the back. I just need to transfer the pattern onto a thicker piece of foam. I then round down the edge with the Dremel and glue it in place. I picked out some nice reptilian eyes and made a cover for them, and then those get glued into place. It's amazing what a difference the eyes make. It really does help bring it to life. I just need to be careful when painting around them. I'm using this 1mm foam for the skin texture, and to create that I press and twist this little tube, and if I do it enough times I end up with this pattern, and then it's just a matter of slowly adding each strip across the dragon's face. I'm doing it this way partly because it's less complicated, but also because I've got a lot of offcuts. It just means going around afterwards and filling in the gaps. Here's how everything is looking so far. I've even built out the back area, especially around the neck, and it's starting to get a little too big for my workstation. I decided something different was required for the neck area, so I went for this soft membrane look, as this will allow the throat to expand and contract when eating food. To create some additional details on the neck, I use a sharpened tube, and I drill it into both the thin and the thick foam, and I'm left with a load of round lumps. The idea is to place these in a progressive manner, so you start off shallow at one side and end up deeper at the other. I also dug through my drawers and found a small hole punch, and this would be great for the really small bumps. Naturally this part was quite time consuming, plus I wanted the bump to look natural and not uniform, so I had to place them randomly but also blend them in with the bigger ones, just to make it look like there's a progression between the front and the back of the dragon. and this is how it looked in the end, and it will blend in further once it's painted. At the back of the mouth I added on these pocket things, and they help to catch the food when it swallows. Now it's time to start work on the top of the head, and I'm going to start with some horns. And for that I'm using this medium density foam offcuts. So I'll cut and grind them into a point, then I use the heat gun to give them a little bit of a curve. I have the perfect place to put these, and that's just behind the crown. And this is the part of the dragon which has the most protection, so I need to make plenty of sharp things. So using the HD foam I make plenty of triangles. Crocodiles have rows of ridges running down their back, so I want to emulate that on the back of its head. So I put down 2 prominent rows just behind the horns, and just for some extra detail I put a slightly smaller row on the inside. Those came out pretty well in the end, but there's still plenty of space to fill out, so I simply filled that up with a couple of strips of foam, and I thought that worked quite well. Now I have plenty of cleanup to do before I add the teeth, and for those all I had to do was cut out a bunch of triangle shapes and then just round them out with a Dremel. I kept the speed nice and low so I don't destroy my fingers, and eventually they're good enough to be used as dragon teeth. I figured I would need about 10 in each row, then it's just a matter of gluing them in place. This does also mean that the mouth won't be able to fully close again, but it's a small sacrifice, because after all a dragon needs teeth, and it looks much more menacing for it. So this is the final look at the dragon before painting. Some of this foam is quite spongy and porous, so it's recommended to seal it first. Either that or you need to give it several coats of paint, and on this occasion I chose option B, and I cover everything in crimson red, and this will act as my base colour. After a quick rethink I decided to mix in some latex with it. This will also give me additional texture, and that made the whole thing look like a boiled lobster. But not to worry, a solid coat of paint on top of this will fix it, and as you can see it's now a solid colour. For the additional details I paint on a brighter red. This is confined to the spots, spikes and the belly, and to make it stand out a little bit more I dab this on some gold. This will also help the dragon to glisten a little bit. For the teeth I paint on a bone colour as the base, and then I stain them with liquid brown shoe polish. This helps make them look a little bit ancient, and with that the dragon's finished. So I've got my hand inside it, and that operates the mouth. Now there's a hole at the back of the mouth, and with that I can insert some smoke, and for that I'm going to use this mini fog machine. And while it may not be very practical, it does work, and it really does make the dragon come alive. So now I'm going to change the lighting setup and create some atmosphere. It doesn't look too bad for a little bit of foam. In the future I could always extend the body further and really fill out the chest and back, but for now I'm happy with where it is. But there are 2 things that this dragon still needs: a gender and a name, so I'd appreciate any suggestions in the comment below. But for the time being I'm going to have a play about in the moody lighting and see if I can breathe a little bit of life into this dragon. Thank you for watching. Don't forget, if I can do it, so can you.